So this video is intended to give you guys an overview of the printing press we'll be using for this first project and for most of the projects in this class. This is a Charles brand etching press. It's a fairly basic press. There are some types of these presses that are motorized. This one is just manually driven. So this is actually what we use to operate the press itself. So if we turn this crank arm, as you can see there, the press bed is moving as I'm turning the crank arm. Doesn't require a lot of effort to turn it. So you can kind of speed up a little bit. So you're kind of just going a nice sort of even kind of medium pace. You don't have to go too fast, but you know, just a nice kind of comfortable medium pace is fine. So as we kind of walk around here, so a few things to point out. So we have a pull handle here, and this is the actual press bed itself. It's just a large piece of solid steel. So that is the press bed. So whenever we're on press, all our printing materials, so our blocks or plates, paper, all of that backing will go directly on the press bed here. You'll notice that it has this gridded layout, which is going to be helpful for registration. If you guys are actually on press and you're printing, you can use this guide to help know where to position your plate or your block, and then to position your paper with respect to your block or your plate to give yourself a nice consistent and even border. So we have these 3 blankets here, which are made out of felted wool. Each of them has their own function. So the top one is called the pusher, and that is the one that engages with the pressure roller and helps to move it through as it's traveling under the press. The second one is called the cushion, which is this thick one here. Just adds a little bit more, cushion, as it's named. And the last one is called the catcher, which is the thinnest one. So a lot of printmaking papers have sizing in them, which is basically a glue or binding agent, and sometimes some processes you actually want to have damp laid paper, so you actually dampen the paper before you run it through the press. So this helps to catch some of that sizing. Also just protects other blankets. As you can see here, that blanket has a little bit of battle damage on it, so you guys really have to be careful whenever you're on press to make sure that you've got adequate newsprint and backing to ensure that you're not accidentally getting ink onto the blankets. Because when that ink dries, those deposits will harden, and that will create these kind of inconsistencies in the surface area, and so sometimes that'll cause the pressure to not be evenly applied, and that will result in some inconsistent prints. So as you can see, they've seen better days, but I would just ask you guys are responsible and try to make sure again that you're putting adequate newsprint and backing down, which we'll talk about more in another video. So those are the blankets. We've talked about the press bed already. So I'll go back over here and show you guys again just kind of the basic operation. So again, you just want to turn the crank arm. In this case, we're going to go clockwise, and that's going to move the press bed along to the other side. As you can see there, it's coming back through. And like I said, just try to keep, a nice kind of medium pace, just whatever feels comfortable. So because of restrictions due to COVID and for CDC guidelines, we can only allow 2 people at a time to be on press. Generally, we normal circumstances would have up to 4 people, but again, because of COVID restrictions and CDC guidelines, we can only have 2 at a time on press. So typically, while somebody is turning the crank arm, operating the press, another person can be kind of pulling these blankets out tight so they don't get bound up as they go underneath the press bed. Turn the crank arm and let the press bed go all the way through. And just keep turning it, keep turning, keep turning. As you get kind of close to the end, you can go ahead and stop. So let it run just about to the end. All right, so right about there. And then we'll go ahead and lift the blankets up and get those out of the way. So again, since we can have about 2 people at a time on press, usually it could be the other person's responsibility to help pull those blankets back. So just pull the blankets back and out of the way. And just try to get them to where they're hanging over the back just like that, right? so they're kind of tight. So whenever you guys are getting set up on press, and again, we'll talk about this more in another video, but you know, you want to make sure that you're not too close to the outer edges. So when you're setting up your printing materials, your block, your plate, your paper, and everything, try to keep it fairly centralized, keep it close to the middle. It's also easier too, since if you're using this registration guide, it makes it easier to read the numbers, figure it out from there. So just kind of keeping everything placed more or less close to the center. And that way things don't get stuck or hung up as they're going through the press. One thing that you guys need to always take note of whenever you're printing is that you have the press calibrated properly. So to do that, you can make adjustments here, and there's one on both sides. So have the other person assisting you and be turning these simultaneously so that we're not distributing uneven pressure and putting too much stress on the tension springs. So if you have the wingspan, you could always turn both of them at the same time by yourself if you have the reach to be able to do that. But otherwise, again, just make sure that you have someone assisting you and helping you turn the other side. For the relief prints, for the linoleum block prints, this first project that you guys are doing, the settings for this is going to be 15/5. All right. So the way to determine that, if we look here, so that 15 is always going to be the top number, and those are going to be designated by these vertical marks here. And then 5 is going to be your bottom number. So to determine that, there's a 0 mark here. You'll count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the last little horizontal etched mark here is going to be 5. So you're going to make that the last visible mark. So again, count from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So 15. So that 15, that vertical mark needs to be lined up with the vertical mark right here, from which the horizontal little marks originate from. So that 15, that top number, lines up with that center line here, and then again count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 15/5, and again make sure that you have that same setting on both sides. Otherwise, you will not be applying even pressure, and that's going to affect the quality of your image. So let's just check this one. So again, 15, right, our top number. Count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the last visible number here. So 15/5. So it's set the same on both sides. So that means that we're good to go. So that number can vary a little bit depending on your paper, for example. So if you have a thinner paper, like a Japanese style paper, we might have to add a little more pressure. Or another solution would just be to add more backing material. But generally speaking, that 15/5 should be an ideal setting or calibration for this first project, for your relief prints, your linoleum block prints. Those settings will change as you move into other projects. But for now, just make sure you keep that 15/5 setting. And anytime before you're printing, just double check to make sure that it's still set properly. So the press can be printed from either side. We started with it on the opposite end, and we were turning it clockwise. So you can print it coming the other direction. In that case, you would be turning the crank arm here counterclockwise. So it would just be a counterclockwise turn, descending the other way. So you can print from either direction. So once you've sent your materials through and it ends up on this side, just make sure that you wipe down the press bed. So just a little bit of mineral spirits on a paper towel. So don't douse the press bed directly. Just apply a small amount of mineral spirits directly to a paper towel. Wipe down the press bed really good. Make sure you don't have any residue left on the press bed. So make sure the press bed gets cleaned up for every printing, and then you can set things up again. So the next group can come in, put their blocks down, put their paper down, put their backing on, pull the blankets down, and send it the other way. So again, you can print from both sides, either clockwise or counterclockwise. It just, depending on what side you're on, will dictate what direction to turn the press. In this case, again, it would be a counterclockwise turn. So from time to time, you might find that the blankets have a tendency to kind of jog or shift on you as you're printing. I will go over that in another video of how to properly change out the blankets, realign them, because as I said, that will most likely happen from time to time. So that's it for this video. And again, this is just really intended to give you guys sort of an overview of the press itself, just kind of basic press function.